Does living a morally consistent life have benefits? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. Does living a morally consistent life have benefits? The short answer is yes. So let's unpack it. So morals, which I covered in a different video, are those decisions that we make that fall on us as an individual that have emotional, spiritual, and existential repercussions. When we have values, our values are enacted in our moral choices. And life, from a moral perspective, can even be seen to be a series of circumstances which compel us to face and make these decisions. And they're infinite. They come in any kind of form. In philosophy, we typically give dramatic examples of, life and death. Does your decision lead to the life or death of this? How do you compute the ethics? Well, ethics are the combination of morality, but how do you compute things? How do you balance? How do you distribute personal justice? How do you carry your character? How do you make these decisions? And they're sort of done in a vacuum, and they seem like an unnecessary test or something, but it's really what life is comprised of. Life is, for humanity and an aware being, our choices end up mainly having moral consequences, and really at the core of the choices are moral decisions. So the morals end up being the enacting of our value system. And then once we have a consistent value system that we're acting our morals, that's what we end up calling our ethical system, or what our ethics are. You have a system of morals for all these different situations. So are there benefits from being morally consistent? And the answer is yes. When we start making moral decisions, consistent moral decisions, we start to find out what our identity is in the real world. We know what we are internally, or when we begin a process of finding out who we are internally and discover who we are and know thyself, we quickly find that knowing ourselves, aside from what we think ourselves is, we are also, in the way we interact with the world, when it's reduced to its essence, we are our moral decisions. We are our personal code of ethics, whatever those end up being. What are the benefits of those things? Well, for starters, we get a more holistic knowledge of self, the essence of self, not the physical body, not any of the physical traits we have. None of it's really superficial. When we find out who we are as a morally consistent being, then we know who the true essence of ourselves are. The essence of ourselves, the consciousness, is the intention of ourselves. And as we make those decisions, as we go through life, and we become consistent with them, we gain strength. Excuse me. We gain strength in those because they become consistent and they build upon themselves. We gain momentum because as we gain a consistent channel of these decisions, the energies of our lives and of our past and our momentums and our reputations flow through it. So the moral decisions allow us to align with ourselves. Excuse me again. So the decisions that we're making, these moral decisions, as we make a consistent series of them and become conscious of them and aware of them, and we become aware of our identity as a moral and ethical person, and as that emanates out into reality and other people can consistently rely on us as a moral and ethical person, and they know what our values are, be they good or bad, And energy propagates off of that. When people say your reputation precedes you, that's really what they're saying. They're saying, oh, I've heard that you either make good moral decisions, like things that not only benefit you, but benefit people in your sphere and people you haven't even met, or we've heard that you're a bad person and that you're really just out for yourself. You make selfish, self-centered decisions, and people are worse off for dealing with you and your energies. But your reputation precedes you, and that's based almost exclusively on the intention of your moral decisions and your personal ethics. So it allows us to align more deeply with ourselves, with our deepest portion of ourselves, our actual essence of ourselves. By making these moral decisions, for sure we're making decisions about how to interact with reality and how to interact with it and how to deal with people. But we're also ultimately finding our alignment with ourself, because the external interactions throughout the course of life, they'll vary and they'll change, and no one's really there to necessarily keep an eye on the consistency of our decisions except us. And as we go through life, we'll find that we've either aligned with our true internal essence through these decisions, or we haven't. And when we do, not only do we get to see who we are, truly who we are, but and not just from self-reflection, but also from what's coming back from the reality, because we can't escape the feedback over a long enough period of time of who we actually are. We can be in denial about it and put it off, but eventually it comes crushing in. And the more we are aligned with the truth of who we are, the better position we are to be in harmony with the reality dealing with us as who we are. And most people's frustrations in life really come from, they think they're one person and they're interacting with the reality as another person, and so the feedback they're getting is not consistent with who they are. And that brings them a great amount of frustration. So these moral decisions allow us to align with who the deepest part of ourselves are, which unlocks our abilities and powers and energies in the proper way. It allows them to flow in a non-frustrating way. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't frustrations with the external reality, because it takes a while for the external reality to align with you, if it ever does. So it gives us alignment with self, and it gives us the ability to build strength of character. And ultimately, the strength of character is what allows us to either succeed or fail as ourselves in the world. And you're talking about Jung's idea of individuation. Individuation is dependent upon us knowing ourselves and exercising ourselves through our moral decisions and creating our own ethical codes. Ultimately, ultimately, that strength or lack of it is what allows us to cross the old river Styx, right? When you get to a point where you've reached the limit of your intellect and you've reached the limit of your five senses, the opportunity to take the leap into the spiritual realm presents itself. And it's at that point, if you've made yourself strong enough through the practice of your ethical code, that you can then depart into the spiritual realm, which that's in another category beyond philosophy. I mean, that goes into other different discussions. But the debarkation point, or the embarkation point, depending on how you're looking at it, into that realm, out of the intellectual realm, is definitely a benefit, especially if you've lived in a morally correct life. If you've been making like morally responsible decisions in your life, and you have a momentum of that, and your character is that, and you've built up, without knowing it, spiritual strength, then when you enter into the spiritual realm, you'll be healthy and strong. And then a little bit outside of the purview of philosophy, but then that's when you enter into that realm with strength and courage and conviction, and you know who you are, and you know that you're living by these universal precepts for the most part, then the universe can join in with you, and you can realize that you've really been not just aligning yourself with yourself, but in a fun twist of fate from the universe, because the universe has embedded the universe in ourselves. You've unknowingly for a period of time, but at some point you become knowing of it. Not only have you been aligning with yourself in a universal manner, but then you're becoming aligned with the universe. And when you get to the edge of that and the transition occurs, then you find that you actually have been preparing yourself to be free in the spiritual realm. And now you're strong. And the benefits there are infinite, because then the infinite intelligence can play with you. The reality can become reflexive and interactive, and universal flow can begin, which it's infinite. So there's no even real reason to say anything more than just it's awesome and it's fun. And that's the benefit. And conversely, if you have decided that it's all right to make immorality part of your character, and that can pop up in many forms, but you've somehow, like, you've either consciously decided, like, it's immoral and you're doing it, and like you're fine with it, and you're like, okay, and you've rationalized everything away about it, or you've deluded yourself and you don't think that what you're doing is immoral, even though other people have, and you've like just steered out of any sort of moral counsel, and you're doing immoral things without knowing it, and you're trying to remain unconscious about your immorality and your bad ethics, and which can lead to evil ethics. You'll find conversely that you have prepared yourself for an entry into a realm that's consistent with your value system. And you probably at some point will not enjoy that decision. It's up to you. A lot of people who do that, they think that they're going to game their immorality by becoming masochists and swapping out their pleasure and pain circuits and enjoying pain and degradation and all these things, with the idea that that's their insurance policy for basically if they go to hell. Oh, well, if I'm going to go to hell, I'll enjoy it because it's like a bunch of degenerates like me. But what they don't understand is those guys they're eternal professionals of being degenerates, and they enjoy torture and all these things. And the greatest torture that lays in wait is for someone to have misformed themselves, for someone to have created themselves in the likeness of degeneracy, only to find out that at their core they're still a pure person, and now they're surrounded by a reality that's awful and masochistic that they've created for themselves, and they've sort of been tricked or gaslighted into creating their own personal hell to live in, and then they got to live out that string for however long that goes. So while you're in sort of the cocoon of self and you've been having to make these moral decisions, it turns out that there are benefits and there are non-benefits, depending on if you're aligning yourselves with good decisions and moral decisions, and you've made discernment and you've internally aligned yourself with universal principles, or if you've gone the opposite direction and you've been self-centered and you haven't taken into account universal principles and all of those more egotistical, self-centered, not being in harmony with the universe or other beings ethics, and that path you're going to get, you get your moral decisions put you on the path to your flow of what you desire. And so it's not some goody two shoes versus the bad kid thing. It's like the actual meat of life is you're here in life, and have you decided over the course of your life to enjoy the beauty of it and make yourself in harmony with it and align with it and try to have the intent to enjoy it to the fullest capacity of the intelligent design that's in it? Or have you rejected all of that, and have you decided that it's an empty pinball machine, and you're out to get yours every second of the day, and compassion is something for suckers, and that type of mindset, and you go down that path, And then you're going to find out that at a certain point, you get what you live. And it's not really up for debate. Like at some point, your decisions, your life is the summation of your decisions up to that point. And so if you're making moral decisions, highly likely you're going to end up in a life you can enjoy, even if it has suffering. And the Buddhists are right about that. Life is suffering. And conversely, if you made a bunch of super selfish decisions and you're trying to game people, well, you're going to deal with that too. So, yeah, does living a moral life have benefits? Yeah. And living an immoral life obviously has the opposite of benefits. So, well, I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. It's always fun to have you. Keep this space open for free thinking and discussions. And yeah, put whatever you want in the comment section. That's what it's there for. Make your own videos, whatever it is, you got it. So, thanks, guys. Think free, be free, have fun.